Today we'll have a look at a fascinating pen by Visconti. It comes in this box, cardboard box, the Visconti Pininfarina. This is a fairly exclusive pen, and if you are a car lover, then Pininfarina should really get your juices flowing. Now this is a very expensive pen. What I'm going to show you is 1900 euros here, and this is loaned to me by Joost Appelboom from Appelboom Pen. So the pen will be returned to him. That's why I'm going to try to not drop it. And it comes in the box like this. Now I'm going to take this out. There was a previous version of this pen, and currently what we are looking at is the carbon version of it, which has carbon. It's made of carbon tubes. It's all very fancy. It comes in this interesting tubular container, and it has these sort of bread toaster things which you can operate, and then the pen pops out, as you can see. It's very, very fancy, and this is the same material as was used for the pen. Alright, so once your pen is done, you can put the toaster away. Also in the box is this tubular needle-like thing. I'm going to cover that. I'll come back to that in a second. But first of all, the pen. I'm going to cover the parts of the pen. I'll tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and then I'll do a writing sample. Now, as I said, this is a very high-end Visconti pen, very high up in the price range, although as Visconti goes, it's not even that terrible. But let's cover the parts of this pen. Very futuristic-looking pen. I'm going to start at what is usually the top of the cap, but now you just see that gaping hole there. That's because this is a retractable nib pen, which is very fancy and cool. Come back to the nib in a sec. Let's go through the pen. Here we have, of course, the Visconti Clip. Very nice, very smooth, and spring-loaded as always. I find that very pleasant to use. I've never had issues with this clip. It says Pininfarina on the side here. I don't know if you can see that, but it's there. And then you have the barrel, which very gently tapers down, and at the bottom is the Pininfarina logo. Okay, so what you have here is a pen. You twist the barrel, and out comes the nib. I personally think it is quite a serious twist, because you pretty much have to rotate the barrel 360 degrees to get the nib out. So, but I have found that with a bit of practice, I'm able to do it in one twist. Alright, the nib. You may recognize this nib. A while ago I did a review of the Visconti Opera Crystal, which also has this tubular nib, right? So tubular nib, it's wrapped around the section, and it is curved slightly upwards. Now, that was the Smart Touch nib. Okay, so Visconti has their gold nibs, which I think are no longer produced. I don't see them on pens anymore. They have their Dream Touch nibs, which are made of palladium. Then they had the Smart Touch, which were made of chromium 18, which I think is just a fancy name for chrome. And now you have this, and this is actually the Flex Touch. This is the medium Visconti nib, and I found this a very pleasant nib. And the reason I found it pleasant is that those Smart Touch nibs, the tubular nibs on the mosquito-filled Opera series, are very, very rigid, and this is called Flex Touch. And Flex Touch, for a reason, I don't know how well you can see that, but it definitely opens up a bit under pressure. So, is this a flex nib? No, but it is much softer, and it yields a bit more as you write. Okay, what I found very cool about this nib is that there is a type of, almost like a heart ECG type waveform on the side of the nib. And what makes it really cool is that is actually a cutout. So you are looking through the nib into the feed, and that gives the black line. Okay, the only other thing that's on the side is Flex Touch and Visconti M for medium. Now, how do you fill this pen? Maybe it's nice to once more show you. So there is a shut-off valve, which you can see there, and that opens up like a little ramp, and then the nib pops out. How do you fill this pen? Well, you pop off the barrel, and here's another cool nifty thing. This is actually a magnetic seal, so the barrel will just pop back on. And as you can see, you have a very basic converter. Now, the problem with the converter is that apparently you are not supposed to put this into a bottle of ink and draw up ink with the converter. Apparently you are supposed to fill the converter directly. So dip this into the bottle of ink and draw up ink as you would usually. However, issue with that is that you may get your hands dirty, etc. So this weird extension, which we have seen on the mosquito fillers first, is also included with the pen. Now with the mosquito fillers, you put this over the nib and feed, put it into the bottle of ink, and draw up ink with the power filler system. This is supposed to go on the converter, and that's an interesting idea because you will not get ink on your hands or on the nipple of the converter, in theory. But it doesn't work, at least not in the pen that I got. And I'll try to show you. Here's a cup of water. Here is this thing. My kind assistant is holding up the water. Now watch what's going to happen here. I can see air bubbles coming out, so I am pushing out air, but as I draw this up, absolutely no water ends up. As I'm doing this, I finally figured it out. You have to wait until it really draws a vacuum. That's really cool, because before this I've been fiddling around a lot with this and I couldn't get it to work because I was, I guess, too impatient. Alright, props to Visconti, they made this. And now ink is drawn up, I take this off and the nipple is completely dry. So there is indeed no ink on that the nipple of the converter, which is really, really cool. You're supposed to put that, of course, pop it back into the pen. I'm just going to empty it out here because there's just water in it. And it should write. Now, the issue is, because I'm not yet done complaining about this filling system, this is cool and it's neat that it works, but your feed remains completely unprimed because this does not touch ink. And I have not figured out a way to make this write straight out of, well, after inking it up. That's an issue. Of course, you can always operate the converter and squeeze some ink into the section, but I think I don't understand why they did not come up with a mosquito filler that just fits over this nib, as is the case with the Opera mosquito fill series. Alright, what do I like about the pen? What do I not like about the pen? Well, let's start with what I like. This pen is cool. I'm sorry, it's cool. It's gimmicky. I held the first version when I was in Florence, which is a dark gray finish. It's neat. The retractable nib, it's cool. The fact that this has a magnetic closure, it's all very gimmicky, very cool, very futuristic looking. You have the clip, you have these nice rivets on the clip, which all gives it a very futuristic and technical look. I like that. There are things I don't like too. Let me add one more thing. I like this nib a lot. It writes well, and with that little bit of springiness to it, very pleasant to use. Okay, things I don't like so much. The problem with retractable nib pens is that on the one hand they're very practical, because instead of having to uncap a pen, you quickly do this and you write. That's great. It's a bigger pen, which is not for everyone, but you know that when you buy a pen. I don't find this the most comfortable section ever. There isn't a lot of texture to it, or things cut out to make it very ergonomic. So I think this is really a pen that you use for short bouts of writing or signatures. Third thing, not having a primed feed after inking it up really is an issue, because you need to fiddle to get it to write. Once it writes, I think it writes just fine, but it's the initial inking up that is a bit of an issue. Alright, finally, the big question, because I think I've mentioned everything I wanted to mention. This is what I love, this is what I don't love, but the big question is this a 1900 euro pen? It's very expensive. For me, the answer is no. And the reason is, beautiful pen, smooth to the touch, definitely cool and gimmicky weird stuff, but what you are buying is a retractable nib pen. You can also buy a Pilot Vanishing Point, you can buy a Lamy Dialog 3, and I don't think in writing those pens really underperform this pen, and they're a whole lot cheaper. What you will get is a unique conversation piece, because it doesn't really look like other pens, maybe a little bit like the Dialog 3, but that's a more blocky design, I think. but you get a pen that requires a bit of fiddling around with to make it start writing. You get a pen that is a little bit finicky to fill, and you get a pen that's really expensive. Is it worth it? Maybe as a conversation piece. I would not buy this, just for the price. Was this 50% cheaper? I would consider it. But right now, I would say no. Now, having said all of that, we need a couple of measurements. Measurements were taken. The weight of the pen is 54 grams. It's heavy, and as I said, it's not exactly small. The capped, so actually it's not really capped, but with the nib retracted, 136.4 millimeters, that's 5.36 inches. Extended, it's 153.5 millimeters, that's 6.04 inches. The section diameter is 12.5 to 14.2 millimeters, that's 0.49 to 0.56 inches. The barrel diameter is 14.4 to 11.5 millimeters, so it tapers down, and that's 0.57 to 0.45 inches. And now you really need to see a writing sample. That's what I'm going to do next. I hope this was useful. Thanks a lot to Joost Appelboom for lending me the pen. I'll send it back to you as soon as possible. Maybe. And I'm glad to see you later. Bye-bye. Alright, so here we go with the Pininfarina. The nib is that M Flex Touch, and the ink Ackerman Royal Blue. Okay, do a bit of writing. It's definitely smooth. Not the ultra smooth molten butter on glass type smooth. A little bit of feedback, but overall very smooth. Not at all scratchy. Okay, a bit of fast writing. There you go. No skips, nothing. One thing I did want to say is I've just inked up this pen, and you saw in the video how slowly that mosquito adapter draws up ink. If you turn the turning knob of the converter very quickly, it will actually pop back in because of the vacuum, so you have to go slow. And it actually took me 15 seconds to fill up the converter completely waiting, so it is not a pen that you should use in a rush. Having said that, let's go on with the wetness. This is a very decent ink when it comes to wetness, I would say, and you can see it's definitely a wet nib. Line variation. It's called the Flex Touch. And as you can see, it definitely offers some line variation, which is very cool. Another thing that I forgot to mention in the first part of the review, that maybe I can show you here, is that you see that white thing right, yeah, it's very hard to see. The white thing right between this metal shutter flap and the nib definitely becomes ink stained. So, just so you know. Okay, finally. Reverse writing, for those of you who enjoy it. Seems to work fine. Turns the medium nib into a fine nib, and that's pretty much it. Joost, thanks for lending me this pen. I'll send it back to you. I hope this was useful. If you want yours, Appelboom. This is all one go, so no dash, but otherwise it won't fit. Appelboompennen.nl. I'm glad to see you later. Bye!